said about Sammy said he wanted his sisters screaming and hollering at his funeral. I'm glad you said that because it kind of took the edge off the fact that they were naturally going to scream and holler, and it kind of made it okay when you said that. It just I don't know. It took the edge off of it, and um, just to recap, Sammy, if you remember the last time he was here at service, I think Sonia was sitting by you, and I was preaching about or whatever it is that I do. I don't preach it about can these bones live again, and it was kind of I got a little emotional. Everybody got emotional. Sammy just went to a very deep place. He wasn't just sobbing. It was what I said yesterday is that, Romans 8 talks about the groanings that cannot be uttered. Let me kind of explain this. When he did that, I thought, well, Sammy's not in a good place. And he hasn't been for a while. He hasn't been since his mom left. And I'm going to say this, and I have no negative intention of this whatsoever. He had a very complicated relationship with his mother and with the religion that she represented. He adored her, unusually. But he also, she had issues with the fact that he was gay. I couldn't say this yesterday, but that was the deal. And he didn't have any issues with God. And Eddie credits that with him being under this ministry. Maybe that helped. But I remember as far back as Church in Midtown, him saying to me, I was standing in my kitchen, and I know God came and spoke to me and said, you're okay just like you are. He said, it just settled it in me forever. He didn't necessarily have that with his mom. Let me tell you what it's like when religious people hold their gay children at arm's length. It's like if they say, you're okay, but you're not that okay. I've kind of, and I want to be careful because my mom's probably streaming, but I've kind of been through this dance with my parents. I've never wanted to embarrass them, but they have to recognize. Like just even a few weeks ago, Dad adores Ken, but I don't think he gets his head around the fact that's my husband. Because he kept saying, well, somebody said something was wrong with the fireplace. And I said, well, my friend's going to fix it. He kept on his friend. I said, you mean your son-in-law? And it was kind of an awkward moment. I said, you didn't call Terry or Debbie your friends. They were your daughters-in-law, and he's your son-in-law. And Mom looked at him. She said, that's right. And I noticed the next card they gave you was to our son-in-law. And I understand. It's like she's, all of their friends from Columbus are white evangelical Trump supporters. And I understand that it's awkward for them because the church still pays their insurance and stuff, and she doesn't want to rock the boat with anybody. But I know what that's like. I also know my dad, bless his heart. When I first came out, I'll get back to Sandy. When I first came out, everybody from Columbus was calling, because it was the end of the world. It was like the most awful thing that has ever happened. The Holocaust was nothing. Me saying I didn't. Anyway. And Mom said, what am I going to tell people? What am I going to tell them? She said, tell them her son's gay and he came out. I said, thank you. Thank you for saying it. It's not the end of the world. And I'm saying that to say, since Sammy's mom passed 2 years ago, I haven't had one conversation with him that he didn't say to me, my mom said to me before she died, I love you just like you are. I wouldn't have changed anything. He usually said it as he was sobbing, but he said, I lived my whole life for her to say that. First time he told me that was beside her casket. And I'm not mad at her. People are just victims of what they've been taught. Even Monday, I was working out. Y'all met my trainer. I was working out, and he had me doing something really hard. I was like, is this thing where you're jumping up on a box and you have the two ropes going at the same time? And I was like, good God. I'm certainly not answering texts while I'm doing that. But when my phone rings, it makes my Fitbit buzz, so I know that I got a call. So in the middle of it, I looked and I said, Eddie Sellers. And I thought, what? I just bought this jacket. I still have something on it. Sorry. You thought this was the old one, but I've lost so much weight I had to get the new one. So I'm down 18 pounds. Come on, Jesus. Won't he do it? Anyway. I thought, why would Eddie be calling me? And you know how sometimes you remember that phone call that you got that said a loved one had passed? There's just a strange energy on it. And usually when the phone rings, I would just say, well, I'll get it when I'm through with it because I'm doing this, this thing. And I said, I need to see what this is. And I called him, and they believe it was probably a heart attack. Sammy was a chain smoker. He hated it, but he was. And on several occasions, he's told me, he said, I'm not going to live to be 50. And he was 47. And every time he would say it, I would rebuke him. But, you know, you can't, people who want to stay, stay, and people who want to go, go. And you can't, all you can do is try to keep them here as long as you can. But when they're checked out, and he just kind of hasn't been. And it's a weird codependent thing because, and Eddie, you've known him longer than I have, so correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like Sammy never allowed himself to have a relationship because of his mom. All right. And so in his respect for her, he just forfeited a lot of life. And again, I'm not even mad at her. I'm saying that it's the whole system. Like this week I was listening to this flat earth movement. It's huge. You can't believe how many, like I was hearing these interviews with people, and they all believe, and I'm not mentioning the president for any negative thing, I'm just saying this is what they believe. They believe that Donald Trump believes the earth is flat and that he can't tell everybody because the government will kill him. And the guy said, why would the government not want you to know that the earth is round? He said, because they don't want us to believe in the Bible. I thought, oh my God, I just want to, y'all know I love the scriptures, but for some people I just want to say, give me your Bible, please. Let me take that away from you because the letter is killing you and you don't even see that it is. Anyway, and then Avery, we were talking about, she said, you met somebody talking, and she believes the earth is, you can't believe how many people believe it because they say the Bible says it. I'm like, do you know how many things the Bible says that you know is not true? Like, why would you choose that? They believe that pictures of the earth from outer space are photoshopped and that it's all a big hoax to get us from believing the Bible. And even, so as soon as Eddie told me, I know I'm jumping around, but just stay with me. His sister Stephanie, he was probably the closest to out of his 4 siblings. But she says, I've been texting him for a day now. He's not returning texts. That's not like him. Will you go over to his apartment or his condo? And so Eddie went there, and he said, when I saw his car in the driveways, I knew it wasn't good, and he couldn't get him to come to the door. So I think you called 911. And he was on the floor of his bedroom. It looked like they said it didn't look like there was any struggle. They didn't do an autopsy, but it looks like a heart attack. And so when he told me that, I said, I've been there before, but I don't remember. Text me the address, and I just went there, and I got there before his sisters did. And nothing even against his sister, because she loves him better than anything, but her first words to me after her grief, her first words to me is, Bishop, do you think he's in hell? And I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus. How can I take the H word, as you call it, out of people's consciousness? Of course he's not. How could you even ask me that? And even as yesterday, his brother, he wanted to give me a check, and he said, can I just have a word with you? And I could tell he's even struggling with it. Like, are you sure? He's like, oh, my God. Do y'all really think God is that obsessed with people's sexual orientation? I mean, do you really think that whatever God is, that he's that preoccupied? Well, he lived and died with it. And that's what I had too much respect. I wouldn't say that yesterday because it's impolite to say that in front of the family. But that's the deal. And he loved it. He loved gospel music. I understand that kind of love-hate dance that some of us have with it, because there's things about it, the gospel music and certain things that you're very connected to, but it's like, how do I explain it? It's like drinking something that you know is deadly, and you got to be really careful with it because it can just, it's delicious, but it's deadly. Do you understand? I mean, the letter kills. It just does. And so in Sammy's case, as heartbroken as I am about it, I think, well, he's at least at peace, and there's things you can't get straightened out with people on this side sometimes, and you have to get to the other side. But I remember, gay pride's not that big a deal with me. I mean, the first 2 or 3 years after I came out, I sold my book there, and then I'm kind of like, I mean, I get it, I support it, but it's just kind of not my thing. But I remember the first time I went to it, and I was watching the parade, and PFLAG is Parents and Friends of Lesbian and Gay, and I saw these parents marching with this flag, I'm proud of my gay son, I'm proud of my gay daughter, I just burst into tears because I thought, thank God you have that, and that you're not gonna, your sons and daughters aren't gonna die. You just love them like they are, because that is who they are. And yesterday I kind of said that without saying it. I just said people are how they are born. But we've been trained to believe stuff. My dad told me when I was 8 or 9 years old, if I ever thought you were homosexual, I would kill myself. And I remember thinking, wow, years later, he didn't remember saying that. I'm like, wow, that was the pivotal moment of my life. I need you to pretend like you remember it. Now you wouldn't remember it for other reasons. But I remember at that young age thinking, well, there's something about me that's so reprehensible that it could cause my dad to take his life. Like, I can't be that, and I spent my entire adult life trying not to be that. That's why when people say, well, Bishop, I'm okay when you teach, but don't start the gay stuff. I'm like, don't say that to me. That's like, if you will allow me, that's like an African American telling them, don't talk about slavery. We don't want to hear it anymore. It doesn't exist. No, you should have the right to say something. I mean, it's an issue. May I say all the hoopla that's been going on this week about parents being separated from their children? People from the slavery community, like, yeah, our very ancestors had their children taken away from it. It ain't no new thing, like all the hand wringing about the Mexicans. Yeah, people from Africa. White people thought that African Americans were like dogs, where you take puppies away in the litter, that the mother will forget about them. And back then there'd be no way. Back in slave times, there'd be no way to track. You just say bye. That was it. So I know I'm opening a lot of windows here, but I'm thinking about a lot of things. So, this week we have processed, and we've cried, and we've laughed, and we've told funny things. Because Sammy was, yesterday at the service, I said, I don't remember, it was about 7 years ago I met him. I said, I don't remember our first conversation specifically. I just remember being doubled over with laughter. Like, I was laughing so hard. Because there's just, when somebody kind of comes from your background, there's just a zillion things that you kind of understand why they're funny. And I referred to this yesterday, but I didn't tell them what it was. I remember one time at Midtown Church, I was talking about how things are so different for young gay people today. I said, now, like, if you go out for brunch in Midtown, there's all these same-sex couples with babies and strollers, and, and Sammy said, I don't believe in that. I believe in being gay the old-time way. I told Carlton Pearson that one time. He fell on the floor. I'm not exaggerating. He was on the floor. He said, oh, my God, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard. And every time we would calm down, we'd start laughing again because it was so funny. And so we have laughed and we've cried, and BJ put together this thing, and I'm glad I went ahead and looked at it because it made me cry again. I said, thank you. I finally got dried up, and you uncorked me again. But I appreciate that he did it. BJ does brilliant work, and just love Sammy in your mind. Don't even be mad at his family, because they love him. It's hard to love people when it's filtered through religion. And when we get to the other side, even when you're singing "I'll Fly Away," it's like when you get to the other side. Remember, I've told you this so many times. My very Pentecostal grandmother, who prefaced every statement with, the Bible speaks out against. I never heard her one time say the Bible is for anything. It was the Bible speaks out against something. And I remember, I don't think it was a dream. I honestly think it was an out-of-body experience with my 4 grandparents. And I remember I woke up one morning, and there was just 100 hate letters and people telling me I'm going to hell, and cut and pasting Romans 1 to me for the 5,000th time. And it was just so oppressive, and I kind of, when you're sort of in that state between sleep and, I wasn't quite asleep yet, and all of a sudden, I looked at my 4 grandparents were sitting at a table, and they looked when I was young. My grandmother had her hair piled up and her Hormone glasses, and they said, what's going on with you? And I said, well, I don't know if y'all have heard, but I've told the whole thing. My other 3 were kind of silent because I wasn't as close to them as I was to my grandmother. And she looked at me and she said, she called me Jimmy Earl. She says, Jimmy Earl, people on that side think that kind of stuff matters. She's on this side. It doesn't matter at all. And I got up off that bed and I was free. I didn't care. You could stand with me with the Bible. You could do whatever. I'm like, God and Addie Mae and my kids said I'm okay, so I don't care what you think. You know? And so that was settled in me. I wish it could have gotten settled in Sammy, but he's so intertwined with that whole thing. Even seeing his family yesterday, I thought, I hate to say it this way, but I think that was the only way out for him. I just, I think when he would come here, it was an oasis for him, but you don't know what people are dealing with otherwise. So I'm not going to tell you not to grieve for him because I'm grieving for him. But it's like you feel everything. I was shocked. I wasn't shocked. I was surprised. I wasn't surprised. Maybe you feel this every time a loved one passes, but like I'm sad that it happened. I'm happy that he's at peace. No. Go ahead, play that if you would, please. And thank you, BJ, for doing this.
How do I say goodbye to what we
Thanks, BJ. Give me a minute. Marshall, would you come sing that other song? I'm just gonna need a second. Can you set him back up, Wellington? Or if you have something, maybe you have something different in mind. I don't know. I want to hear that one, but I think he's got it.
There was a woman in the Bible days. She'd been sick so very long. When she heard that Jesus was passing by, she joined the gathering throng. While she was pushing her way through, somebody asked her, "What are you trying to do?" She said, "If I just could touch the hem of his garments, I know that I'll be made whole right now." Yeah, she cried, "Oh Lord, oh Lord." She cried, "Oh Lord." She cried, "Oh Lord, if I just could touch the hem of his garments, I know that I'll be made whole right now." Well, she spent her money here and there, Lord, till she had no more to spare. Oh, the doctors, they did all that they could, but their medicines were no good. Well, she touched him, and the Savior didn't see, Lord, but he cried out, "Someone touched me." Yeah, she said, "If I just could touch the hem of your garments, I knew that I'd be made whole." Oh, she cried, "Oh Lord, oh Lord." She cried, "Oh 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 Lord, if I just could touch the hem of his garments." Oh, she said, "If I just could touch the hem of his garments." Yeah, she said, "If I just could touch the hem of his garments, I know that I'll be made whole right now, right now, right now, right now, right now.
Thank you, Marshall Ruffin. Okay, that did it. Whew. All right. Yeah, I agree. All right. We speak into this atmosphere. We say, "Let there be light." We're ready to greet the podcasters. We welcome you to Metron Live Podcast, coming to you from Metron in beautiful, historic Midtown Atlanta. Metron people, give the podcast people a hand. Glad that you are here. Thank you, Charles McFall, the rock god of podcasting, for continuing to make this possible. We're finishing up the series today called Consciousness and Visualization, Finding a Practical Roadmap for the Fourth Dimension. Hey, my beauties. Look at y'all. Y'all better come up and hug your poppy first. I'm so glad to see you. Hello, darling. I don't know why I speak to them in British accents, but it's just something that I do. If you don't know, that's my wonderful, beautiful daughter and my wonderful, beautiful granddaughters. Let me start with this scripture. This is Ephesians chapter 1, verse 17 and 18. I don't use the New English translation that much, but I've always liked the way this was paraphrased. It's Paul's prayer for the Ephesians, and he says, I pray that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give you spiritual wisdom and revelation in your growing knowledge of Him, since the eyes of your heart have been enlightened. Now, I like the way this is phrased. First of all, because he uses the imagery of your heart having eyes. In other words, there's a way that your brain sees, there's a way that your heart sees. I like that he actually uses the word enlightenment. You don't see the word enlightened in a lot of Western translations. Enlightenment is more of an Eastern concept. So I always pick up, my intent always picks up when that word is translated enlightened. Most Western people think in the realm of revelation, whereas enlightenment is like Paul saying, when it pleased the Lord who separated me from my mother's womb to reveal His Son in me. In other words, God's not something I have to find. God's something I have to discover on the inside of me. God's been there all along. And I like the fact that he speaks of enlightenment in past tense. And the implication is, just because you have been enlightened doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see. Listen, he says, since the eyes of your heart have been enlightened. In other words, now that you have eyes to see. Have you seen, I've seen several people put these things on Facebook where it'll show, one of them I saw this week was a baby that was deaf, that they put a hearing aid, and you see his face when he hears for the first time. And I've seen another one where babies, they put glasses on them. And I don't know how you even test a baby for vision. I don't even know how you would do that. But there's one where the baby's like crying and he's fussing, and they put these glasses on, and he goes, like you could see this thing, this total paradigm shift because he's able to see. I think, nothing against modern whatever, but I think a lot of kids that are diagnosed ADD or ADHD, sometimes maybe they're just not seeing or hearing well. I always want to say, before you just start riddling them out the wazoo, get their eyes checked. Make sure they can see the board. Or what. I've talked to so many people who said, the teacher was on me all the time because I wasn't paying attention in class, but I couldn't see, 2 rows ahead of me. And so you need to check out all those things. But there's a lot of scriptures that make the implication that just because somebody has eyes doesn't necessarily mean they're going to see. So what Paul is saying here is you have been enlightened. This is available to everybody, but now I pray that you use these eyes of your heart, because there are things, some of the things I was even sharing a minute ago about religion and about Sammy or whatever, that there are people who are all around it, but they don't see it. People who only see the Bible don't see God. How do you make a case for that? Well, after the resurrection, the disciples didn't recognize Jesus. And in one of the Gospels, it talks about how he walked with these disciples on the road to Emmaus, which was about a 7-mile journey. That's longer than the Peachtree Road Race, which, by the way, we're running it next week. We weren't going to. And then Ken said, well, let's do. And I said, well, let's pick a decision. And he said, let's do it. I said, all right. And we got numbers. We got 2 L's for cheaper than I've ever bought them before. I mean, last year we got U's. We've been moved up. And even last week, to show you how when you make a decision, I'm getting back to my point, when you make a decision, things fall into line. She had advertised them on Craigslist, and so last week, Dad and Mom came for Father's Day, so Ken picked them up that morning. Then he went on out to be with his boys in the afternoon. So I took Mom and Dad home. So she texted me and said, can you meet me earlier than we had planned, which we had planned 6 o'clock. I said, yeah, that's fine. She says, can you meet me in Tucker? And I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, I'm in Tucker. It was just like, that's amazing how when you make a decision, planets start lining up. So who knows? We might win it this year. We might. Not one of them Kenyans off the. We've had enough Kenyans. Sick of it. It's always an African that wins. Not an African American, it's an African. The American part slowed y'all down. It's true. Those Africans aren't eating a lot of crap. You know what I mean? They can still run. They ain't got high blood pressure. Come on now. I'm preaching. Don't shout me down just because I'm preaching good. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say it's a long way. So Jesus walked with those disciples for you can talk for a long time, 7-mile trek. And they were discussing the scriptures. And he found them. He said, why are you crying? They said, because, all this has happened. And think about this. They're walking with Jesus, talking about the scriptures, and they don't recognize him. They can't see him for the scriptures. Well, I thought the scriptures revealed God. They can. But you think about the cloud in the wilderness that the Israelites followed. It did two things. It provided light for them when it was a fire by night, but it also hid them from their enemies. So sometimes the thing that flips the light on also flips the light off. That's why I love my spiritual tradition. I don't take anything away from it. I think I said this to you recently, but I posted something the other day, and somebody I'm Facebook friends with who's kind of in the same line of thinking that I am and people like me are. And he said, wow, that really sounds like something from our Word of Faith days. And I said, well, I actually still consider myself Word of Faith. I said, that's not, I've kept the parts that were valid to me. I don't want to think that was a waste of time. When I was taught, you guys came from that same background. We're taught about the words of your mouth and speaking of the mountain. I believe that now more than ever. So I'm able to rightly divide and say, well, now this part of where you've kind of moved off to, I can't accept. It doesn't work for me, but even that's not going to make me root up the memory of you. I'm going to tell you, you're going to be so much happier when you start seeing yourself just learning lessons from everybody. Instead of, there aren't good guys and bad guys. There's just lessons to be learned. And so the people that I've learned from, I appreciate, even though I'm not necessarily a devotee of theirs, I appreciate what they imparted to me. I'm always looking for word. As recently as last week, we got through here. Ken went on to Eatonton, and I took Mom and Dad, and Jared was here. Mom and Dad, Jared, and I went over to Opry Diem, and we're sitting there in the lounge where we've been so many times. We're eating in one of the little pit groups. And sometimes you'll just hear a word that just works for you. And the people, I didn't even look at them, but the people who were sitting at the table were talking about nutrition and working out and all this kind of stuff, which I'm very interested in. And this one woman said, what you got to do is learn to feed your body and not your belly. And I may have heard that phrase before, but I don't know. It was just like, I thought, that just so dropped into me. All week long, I've made good food choices because of that. Just that. And we weren't even talking, but she said, feed your body and not your belly. Because I know what it's like just to go, screw it, I'm so hungry, I'm just going to eat, whatever. And now I don't feel that way. Now I'm like, no, let's look for something better. Let's look for something healthier. It may take a little longer to find it. You might have to go a little extra effort, but it's worth it. Because I don't want to just feed. It's too easy just to feed your belly. Long range is feeding your body. And I thought, thank you, strange lady, that I didn't even look at your face. But something about that. I didn't hear anything else they said. What I heard was blah, 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 nutrition, blah, 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 blah. Feed your body, not your belly. It was like, got it. That's a word in season. That's apples of gold and settings of silver. And it's amazing to me that these men could be talking about the scriptures and not recognize Jesus. Can anybody tell me when they finally did recognize him? Well, it's when they sat down, when he broke the bread, they recognized him. Yes, that's what you're referring to. After he left, didn't our hearts burn within us? They did not recognize him. And in other words, listen to me, you don't find God in the Bible, you find him in people. You find him in relationships. You just do. That doesn't mean throw your Bible away. What I'm saying is the Bible is to bring you to a place where you can just love people as they are and know them after the Spirit and not after the flesh, which brings me to the second passage. I've rarely ever taught on this, but this is Mark chapter 8, verse 22 through 25, and it's in the Jonathan Mitchell New Testament. This is when Jesus healed the blind man at Bethsaida. Now, this translation is very wordy, but just bear with me. It says, "And so they proceed in coming into Bethsaida. Here people are now progressively bringing a blind man to him, repeatedly calling him to his side." By the way, both the Concordant Literal Version and the Jonathan Mitchell, they never use past tense. The Greek is always in the now. So that's why, and the Hebrew is always in the now. That's why you'll see translations that say the Spirit is vibrating over the face of the deep. And that's what quantum physics is finding out, that everything that ever happened is happening now. Time actually is an illusion. If we can... Side note, if we can learn to live in Kairos and not in Chronos, I think we could stop aging. But I think it's because we've bought into the concept of time. That's a different... That's all I'm saying. So, according to the tense used here, this is happening as we're speaking. It says, repeatedly calling him to his side, continuing to urge and implore him that he would touch him. So then, taking a hold upon the blind man's hand, he led him forth outside of the village. Then, upon spitting into his eyes while placing his hands on him, he proceeded to ask him, "What, if anything, or whatsoever, are you now seeing?" Now, let me just stop right there. Jesus did some very unconventional things. And whether you believe these were literal things that happened or not is beside the point. The parables and the miracles all teach us something. Even yesterday, at the end of Sammy's service, there was a couple, you know them. The young woman came up to me and said, "I want to tell you, first of all, we loved what you said today." And she said, "My husband's an atheist, and he loved everything that you had to say." He said, "Well, I can believe in what that guy's saying." And I said, he's not the first atheist to tell me that. And I think it's not that I'm making a case for atheism, but I think a lot of people, when they do make that very definite declaration, it kind of frees them up to hear better. Even though my brain has a negative reaction when somebody says I'm an atheist. I don't like the way it makes me feel. However, I have really good conversations with atheists because we can cut through a lot of, and I can just say, well, Jesus said so and so, and they're not even offended by it. They're like, yeah, well, that makes sense to me. Which says to me, I don't really think you're an atheist. I think you don't know what to call it, and you've opted out of religion. I think really you believe in God because you're comprehending everything I'm saying to you. Actually, you're understanding it more than a lot of Bible thumpers would. So I think you just need a better word for it. And I think maybe that's what some people, when they say now, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, I think that's what they're trying to say. I think they're saying, I believe in something, but I can't buy into organized religion. I'm like, fair enough. I went to see that Bill Maher movie he made a few years ago called Religulous, and I probably agreed with, I've probably said 70% of the stuff he said. I wanted to say, Bill, I don't think you're an atheist. I think you have issues with religious people that I have those same issues with. I just think you have a very clear-eyed way of saying it, but I'm not that shocked by it. People are saying, did you see that movie? I'm like, yeah, it's like pretty much. I think some of it he borrowed from me, frankly. But what I was going to say about Jesus here, Jesus would do some very unconventional things. And this wasn't the only time that saliva was somehow factored into his miracle. What does that mean? For me, it means it's such a radical thing to do that it forces people, and it's kind of why I wanted, not only time to get my composure back, it's kind of why I wanted Marshall to sing that again about touching the hem of his garment, because the woman with the issue of blood, which was 3 chapters before this, she had no scriptural precedent for that. If she had gone to anyone and said, what do you think would happen if I were to touch Jesus' clothes? Most people would have said, well, probably his bodyguards are going to push you back. Because this woman, if you know, she was tantamount to a leper because she was considered unclean. And so it would have been male instinct to keep this nasty woman away from Jesus. And it says she had to push through. And she says, but if I can touch his garment, I'll be whole. She basically created her own belief system. Because if she had gone to anyone else and said that, they would have said, well, there's the, Moses never said anything about touching people's clothes in the law. She made up her own way to believe. And I think when Jesus did these very unconventional, radical things, I think it was his way of saying, don't lock healing into a formula. I think it's true, and this is a word for somebody here. I think it's true, even if that's the way you got healed the last time, doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to work for you this time. Because I think sometimes you get locked into a system. This is what works for me. That's why I told you last night, Ken needed new shoes for running. He wanted New Balance, and he said, I don't see any New Balance here. I said, you might better think outside the box. I said, it might be Nikes. But that's the, we get, and I'm surprisingly a creature of habit. You think I'm, Aries are supposed to be spontaneous. I kind of like doing things, a routine. So I have to say to myself, sometimes you need to do this differently. And I think, when somebody spits in your eye, that's kind of going to get your attention. Now, if I was blind, I'd be like, spit on, let's try it. Which is why I think sometimes even trying to make things like the Holy Spirit, you try to legislate it doesn't work. I've told you this a zillion times, but back in the day when I used to do a lot of street ministry, I couldn't, if it was raining, I would go to hospitals, and I would just go from, I was like 17, 18. I would go from hospital room to hospital room. I'd say, hi, I'm Jim Swilley. I'm a minister. Would like to know if there's anything you'd like for me to pray with you about. I go in this one time, the guy was not much older than me. I think he's like around 19, 20. He was laying there in bed, and I said, can I ask you what you're in here for? And he said, well, they're thinking they're going to amputate my leg. It's gangrene has set in. We can't seem to arrest it. And I said, Jesus said if we lay hands on the sick, they'll recover. And his wife said, it was reading a magazine, not even listening to me. She put that down. She said, are you Pentecostal, charismatic? I said, well, yeah. She goes, we don't believe in that. We believe in the will of God. If it's the will of God for him to lose his leg, then we say so be it, and we don't question the will of God. And the guy's looking at me like, please, please come back later. I think if I had been married to somebody that said it, I'd say, you're going to hear from my attorney tomorrow, because if you love me this much, you ought to be saying, baby, come in here and do a rain dance, rattle some beads, do a Hail Mary, God grant me the serenity, footprints in the sand, what you got? Praise something. Let's dry anything up. As they got me on the gurney, I'm like, wait, let this guy pray one more thing. Just wait. Let's do anything. And I remember looking at, here's this young couple, and she's already resigned to the fact that he's going to lose his leg. I thought, why would you at least try it to say, well, I don't necessarily believe that way, but sure, pray. Couldn't hurt. But see, religion takes you out of that. So that might have not have been the only reason Jesus did this, but let me get to the point of what I'm trying to make. It says, and looking up, he kept on saying, I continue looking at the people or humans. I continue seeing them as trees continually walking around. In other words, he went from blindness to I can only imagine the guy must not have been blind from birth, because he knew what trees look like. He said, I see men, but they look like trees. This is the only time that I can remember in the Gospels that Jesus healed somebody incrementally, other than the 10 lepers. It says they were healed as they went. So there seemed to be some implication that was progressive. But usually, Jesus got it right the first time. This is interesting. He says, I see men as trees walking. And then it says, next, he again put his hands upon his eyes, and then he looked throughout and saw thoroughly or clearly, and he was restored to his former state. He even kept on attentively looking at and seeing everything at a distance quite distinctly. Now, I don't know why for sure I wanted to talk about this today, but I had this really strong in my spirit yesterday. Like, I want to talk about this miracle where Jesus prayed, and the guy said, "I see men as trees walking." And I went over, back in the early 70s, Johnny Cash did a movie called Gospel Road, and I used to do the song, was "If you'd only stop and touch me, if you'd only stop and touch me, if you'd only stop and touch me, I know I could." And then he goes, "I see men as trees walking." It was a great song. I used to do it right out here on this sidewalk many years ago. So I sent a message to Rutherford. I sent a message to Doug Wentz. I said, because sometimes we brainstorm this way. I said, just curious, what does it mean to you when the man says, "I see men as trees walking"? And I don't know if you follow Doug Wentz. He's really brilliant and prolific. Like, I can't believe how quick he wrote me back this really long thing. And he was taking it to a whole thing about Jesus seeing Nathaniel under the fig tree and all kinds. I was like, wow, that's deep. That's a little deeper than I'm going in, but I'm going to save that for something later because that's really kind of amazing. I mean, he really just has an amazing mind. And then Rutherford's take on it was entirely different. I don't think he'd mind me quoting you. He said, "Well, what I think it means is that the first time the trees represented the cross and Jesus touched you the first time, but then," he said, "I've learned the second touch is when you really see." He said, "I've learned much more from you than I did from Mary's boy." I was like, thank you. That gave me chills. Don't post that on Facebook. Or one thing, I wasn't going to say it yesterday, but Eddie said it before. Sammy always claimed to be a swilly-eyed. He says, "I don't care. People think you're a cult leader." He says, "I'm a swilly-eyed and I ain't proud of it. And I don't care what anybody says." But I understand in his very Rutherfordian way what he was saying. There are some things, Jesus may have said it, but you don't hear it until it comes through the voice of somebody you have a personal connection with. Ultimately, it is the voice of God. I mean, over the years, I've had 2 or 3 people have said to me, "I need to ask you something. When I feel like I hear God's speaking to me, it sounds like your voice. Is that wrong?" I mean, and I said, "Well, be careful, because don't think that everything that pops out of my mouth is divinely inspired, because believe me, it ain't." Just, you have to know. I said, "I understand what, Jesus said, 'My sheep know my voice, and a stranger they'll not follow.'" It's just the way sheep respond to their shepherds. When several shepherds bring sheep into a sheepfold, the next morning they all have their own little noise that they can make, and those sheep will hear it and follow it. And you think, how do they? Some of you will know what I mean by this, and this, I hope this doesn't sound racist anyway, but when you go to get your nails done, it's usually Vietnamese people. I mean, it just is. That's not a stereotype. It just is. And have you ever noticed, those of you that get manicures, like when those Vietnamese women are talking to each other, you can't tell. It's so quiet. And, it just, to me, it sounds like, and then the other one will laugh, and I'm like, "Did y'all just say something?" And they're laughing. I want to go, "Are y'all talking about me?" What is it? Is this about me? Like, I'm waiting for the one to say, "This isn't about you." But it's like, it so doesn't sound like they're talking. Y'all know what I'm talking about? They're just going, like, how did that woman across the thing hear and she said something back to you? Like, and I'm not, again, don't write me letters. My mother was Vietnamese. I'm not making fun of it. I'm saying it doesn't sound like a language to me. Like, how did you, but they're tuned into each other. It's like if you've ever been in a foreign country and you at the airport, you can hear somebody speaking English. It's like, if that's your main language, your ear will, out of this din of noise, you'll pick up, oh, that was, so that's what that is. But here's where I want to take this today when we're talking about visualization and Paul saying, now that you have been enlightened, now see spiritually. What that says to me is that there are people who have been touched by Jesus, and I think this is what Robert was trying to say. There are people who whatever and whoever God is, whatever he, she, it is, something legitimate happened with them. I'll never take that away from them. If you tell me you had an experience with God, or you were born again, you were baptized in the Holy Spirit, I'm never going to try to talk you out of that. I do believe something real happened to you. It probably was more on your end with your perception changing. I think God already felt about you the way that he was going to feel about you no matter what. But I do think there are people who are going through life seeing men as trees walking. There is a higher state of consciousness. And the compassion here is Jesus didn't say, "What? You see men as trees walking, you're not doing it right. Don't tell anybody that you're invalidating my miracle ministry. Man, when I pray for the blind, they see on first touch." That's not what he says. He touched him again. Some people, listen to me, some people just haven't been touched the second time. And you just have to be patient with them because they're not seeing you. They're seeing people as trees walking. And until, I've referred to it over and over again. We were watching an old movie this morning before we were getting ready, and Billy Burke was on it, who played Glinda. And, at the end of Wizard of Oz, when she says, "You've always had the power to go home." And Scarecrow says, "Well, why didn't you tell me? Well, why didn't you tell her that?" And she says, "Because she wouldn't have believed it. She had to learn it for herself." It used to make me want to smack. I'm like, "Shut up, Glinda." Now I think, Glinda, you actually have a point. There's some things you just can't tell somebody until they see it for themselves. Once in a while you can advise somebody, but when somebody's in the middle of, when you see them continue to go through the same relationship issues and the same, just cycles repeating, unless you have a word in season for them, all you're gonna do is make them double down more to defend themselves about why they're right. I don't know if y'all saw this little video I posted the other, I think Thursday. It's got 1,500 views on it, and I talked to my friend Howie today. He said, "Would you mind just redoing that, or at least cut the part off about Sammy for those of us that didn't know him?" Because he said, "I think a lot of people need to hear that other part that you said." And I said, "Fair enough." But what I was saying is, the reason, it's not that I don't believe in free speech. It's not that I don't believe in dissent. It's not that I don't agree with a lot of stuff that people post politically, but I said, let me tell you something. We're living in a country now that is so polarized and so tribal that it's nearly pointless to say anything political, because all you're going to do is make the other side, who already has their built-in arguments. There's things that progressives already think about conservatives. There's things that conservatives already think about progressives. And no matter what you say, you're going to feed into that stereotype. And I said, because I do it too. When I see somebody post something that I disagree with, I'm like, I'm unfollowing you. I just don't want to read it. I'm not telling other people what to do. I'm saying I'm looking at this in an asymmetrical way. I'm trying to understand, why do people see things the way that they do? Instead of just, I don't know if you look at the feed as much as I do, but people are just saying the same things over and over again. You might as well just write a script, because they're going to say this, and then they're going to say that, and you're going to defend your guy, and you're going to defend. And it's just, more power to you if you've got the stomach for it. I just have opted out of that system. Not that I'm not opinionated. It's just, until you really have look, I've seen people from Church in the Now post things that I think, you must not have ever heard one thing that I ever preached in 30 years. You must not have. I must have had no influence on you whatsoever. And it really kind of oppresses me when I see it. So I just think I'm just out of that. I'm just out of it. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And there are some days where you say, I don't know, is there really that new world coming? And you have to believe that you believe it. Like, yes, sometimes things get shaken before they settle down. Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. Maybe it's just all part of the process. Yeah, it's the demolition phase. Absolutely. There may be more to that, and I might come back to it again, but that's where I want to leave it today. I did want to touch on this. Einstein says, an attempt at visualizing the fourth dimension: take a point, stretch it into a line, curl it into a circle, twist it into a sphere, and punch through the sphere. You know what he was saying? If you want to heal a blind man, spit in his eyes. He was saying the way you think something should work is not the way that it works, which is why quantum physics was so revolutionary to Newtonian physics, because Newtonian physics says what goes up must come down. In quantum physics, once we got microscopes and looked at the unseen, like what was not seen to there's no gravity. Nothing makes sense. Things exist in two different places. Like everything that we thought about the three-dimensional world isn't true when you go subatomic. There's this whole other reality, which to me is science giving us a kingdom key to open up the spirit realm. And even at that, scientists don't have all of the answers. Sophia and I had this conversation months ago because we were talking. Remember that day we were talking about what you had learned in school, and she was asking me, "What do you believe about how God created the world and everything?" And it was a very great. That's when she looked at me. She said, "Papa, you should have a podcast." But it was a great conversation because I said, "Well, there's something out there that's bigger than us, and people don't know what to call it, so they call it God." And I said, now what they teach you in school is true, and a degree of what you read in the Bible is true. It was Moses trying to explain the unexplainable, speaking in poetic language. And it's the creation account in Genesis is beautiful. There's so much great symbolism in it. But even scientists, the greatest scientists in the world will only bring you up to a point and still say, but there's some things we just don't understand. Exactly. That's why we have the spiritual. That's why we have the mystical. That's why we understand as much as we can and also know that there's some things that are just beyond understanding, and that doesn't make us sad. It makes us adventurous. It makes us, well, maybe I can't get all the answers, but I can push back, the door to mystery. Maybe I can reveal some things that weren't revealed before. I'm not going anywhere, but if I were to go right now, I don't think my living's been in vain. I think I've opened up a lot of doors. I didn't totally take religion down, but I wounded it a little bit. I mean, at least, I made some people rethink some things. I hear it all the time. I mean, people are always saying, you make me. I have people tell me, even when I disagree with you, you do make me think of things I hadn't thought before. I'm like, well, you're welcome. I have lived out my purpose on earth. Now I'm going to Disney World. No, I don't know if you saw what Eddie posted today. He said, what if there was no Metron? What if Bishop just got tired of doing it? It actually made me think. I thought, what if there wasn't? It's good y'all showed up. Today, or I'd be like, well. No, he wasn't being negative. What he said. Y'all shouldn't take, and I don't take y'all for granted for coming. So. This is, Avery was asking me Thursday, she said, are we going to do a board meeting? Because we usually do one every year. And I said, well, we can. Everything's kind of exactly like it was. We can make it into a meeting, but everything's sort of like exactly like it was last year. It's like no more, no less. Everything, it's like, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It just is. I said, well, we can meet. We can meet and do shots or something, but this is the best board meeting ever. But and I guess okay, we will. And I'm kind of waiting for what is the next thing, because these 4 years they went by so fast. And so I'm thinking, well, what is the next thing? And I'm still trying to figure out what that is, because I know my declarations make things happen. So I want to be very careful what I declare, what I decide, because when I make a decision, things start happening. So what I was going to say is, even about this, whatever Metron is, it is unusual. It's unusual that most of y'all don't live in this neighborhood. You've heard all the stuff that I said today, talking about Sammy, and this is not a gay church. The gay population here is quite small. And there are plenty of gay churches in Atlanta, but that's not how we identify here. And some of those other gay pastors don't know what to make of me, because they think I should be more, you should be an activist and you should have HIV awareness and everything. I'm like, I applaud that you're doing that. It's kind of not what I do. And I feel like if I did that, I'm totally upfront with who I am. But if I did that, I would be doing something that it's not really organic to me. And I can't pull that off. I can only, all right. Well, that was the point I was making in the video. I said, I don't have to make a lot of political statements, even about my philosophy, because you see my life. I mean, the reason I post so many pictures and whatever is I want people to, you can't believe how many men will tell me, when I see pictures of you with your children or your grandchildren, I pray for the day that I'll be reunited with mine, and you give me hope. It's not just that I'm trying to exploit everybody. It's like I want people to see you can live the truth, and it's not, some people can't get their head around the truth, but the people that really matter in your life are going to be fine. And I've had 2 people just in the last week that have approached me who are on the verge of coming out, and they're freaked out because they're married, and there's a lot I can tell them. Like, well, it's not going to be easy. You got to really, the very fact that you're asking me if you should means you may not be ready to. So you need to, because I said I came from a very liberal world and inclusive theology, and it still cost me a lot. So, when you're a trailblazer, a pioneer, an apostle, you got to be prepared for what happens when you live out there a few steps before the rest of the culture. Eventually, the culture gets caught up. I have believed that. Not that I'm trying to equate myself with them, but most, you got Gandhi, JFK, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, like all the people who are really groundbreakers, all got shot and killed. I believe I'm going to be the first one who breaks through and doesn't get martyred for it. I don't want to be, I admire what they did. I've been to all their graves and, paid homage. I would like to, if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to live. I'm not through yet. What's that? I've quoted him a lot lately. I have 2 of his quotes today. This Jonathan Lockwood Huey. He says, "Identify your assumptions or what you believe. Question how you feel when you hold those assumptions. Visualize holding different assumptions. Ask yourself how it feels to hold a different worldview." Now, those of you who have sat in my ministry for years know that I've said this. I've said, don't take my word for something. If it messes with your tradition, you think about, how does it make me feel toward God? How does it make me feel toward myself? How does it make me feel toward my fellow man? If you can answer those questions, if it improved you, then it was God. You don't have to micromanage it. But I know sometimes when people put a scripture on Facebook, it just has a dark energy to it. I'm like, I don't like the way, I know that's the word, but I don't like the way that makes me feel, because you're using it as it's one thing when somebody's going through a hard time and you can say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Yeah, that's awesome. Or I know what it's like to be on an airplane and there's an explosion on the plane. I'm like, he who dwells under the secret place of the Most High shall abide. And I was doing some 91st Psalm out loud. So I don't want to give up that, but I don't like when somebody says the Bible when it's the putting forth of the finger, like in Isaiah 58. I'm like, ew, you just creeped me out. And my heart's not hard. I'm open to reproof and rebuke, but that just creeped me out. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Well, since I told the story of my grandparents, let me tell you about the last time I saw my Uncle Harry again, if you indulge me. Because I hadn't really seen him since, this is back before he passed. I hadn't seen him since 2010, and a lot of other people in my family to this day are extremely opinionated about it. And the last time I was with Uncle Harry, who was probably the most godly man that I know. Christina remembers, we're on the way to her high school graduation, and she's got a white cap and gown on, nosebleed like you can't believe. And I called him and said, Uncle Harry, I don't have time to explain this. We're going to Christina's graduation. We can't stop her nose from bleeding. Can you? He spoke a word, and it stopped immediately. And I think you didn't have one since then. So he was the real deal. And he had that voice like God. I was sitting at the table with him, and he said, Jim, I have a word for you. Will you receive it? And I thought, oh, here we go. I thought, I'm about to hear some Leviticus, aren't I? And he just looked at me and he said, remember those first things you believed in the beginning of your ministry. Remember those things that you believe for. Don't ever forget those things, because those things are still true. And that is all. I was like, aren't you supposed to rebuke me? And I thought, my coming out may have been out of his comfort zone, but he knew enough to not attach his personal opinion and call it the word of the Lord. Because back in the day when a lot of people were prophesying, Doc, people prophesied their agendas. That's why we know in part and we prophesy in part. Because there's some of God in it, but there's a whole lot of... That's why I just go ahead and tell you, no, I like attention. I'll get attention. I'll put a bright blue jacket on and say, look at me. I don't have to... get my way the other way. You know what I mean? It's like people want to be heard. I know how to get heard. That even made Marshall laugh. This quote, we're about to wrap it up. I like this quote. It says, surely there is grandeur in knowing that in the realm of thought, at least, you are without a chain, that you have the right to explore all heights and depth, that there are no walls, nor fences, nor prohibited places, nor sacred corners in all the vast expanse of thought. We don't have to pray for people's spirits. We have to pray for their minds. The problem's in the mind. You're renewed in the spirit of your mind. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's a lot of people whose spirit's fine. They'll go through life and they'll be with God, but they just messed up the whole time they were here because they didn't have this right. Listen, until you get this right, Jesus himself could come spit in your eye. It ain't going to make you see. And that's why you've got to learn. There's some hard lessons that you've learned that you're like, man, that thing kicked me in the butt. But when I opened my eyes, I could see clearly. I knew when I opened my eyes, I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. I learned from that. And it was a hard lesson. I don't know that I could do it again. Have you ever had a medical procedure that you didn't know was going to be as bad as it was? And then, like for instance, years ago I had LASIK, and it was great. I could never do it again. Now that I know what, I remember laying there, and he said, now everything's going to go totally black for a few seconds. I said, wait, what? Nobody told me that. Well, it's too late now. Now that I know that, he's telling me, I've done 100,000 of these. I said, I'm not doubting your ability. I just didn't know I was about to go blind for a second, and it's messing with my head. I'm having a little bit of a panic attack. So that's why after 10 years and it kind of wore off, I said, I think I'll just go to Pearl Vision and get me some, I'm going to get some, they got some Versace frames that I want. It's fine. It's all good. Don't you want to get lazy again? No. I already did that. You want to do it? More power to you. All right. And then I think this is the last one here. I've got, it says, as a happy person, you radiate happiness to the world. Visualize your light radiating throughout the world, passing from person to person until it encircles the globe. That's what I want to end this series on, because you don't have to get people saved. You don't have to change. It's not your business. It's not your business. I don't think she'll mind me saying. Karen asked me. She said, somebody that wants to come to the meditation thing, are you okay with that? I said, that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's her ex-husband. Is that okay? Yeah, we don't care. It's a judgment-free zone. It's fine. They're actually still married. Guess what? You don't have to have an opinion about it. You have to say, are they getting back together? It's not your business. Sit on the beach and meditate and shut up. It's like, and I don't even have to tell you all that, because that's already the world we live in. Well, why are that? Because we're fine. I, t- I told Christina that because her mom's been staying here some, and she stays at the Highland Inn when she stays, and sometimes I've dropped the girls off there. You know, Terry and I went through years where we were not good with each other. And I can't say that we're best buds, but we're friendly to each other. The other day I was dropping the girls off, and I said, Terry, can you believe after all these years I'm still dropping kids off for you? And she said, I know, what year is this? And we just had a good laugh. And it's like, yeah, we're good. It's fine. That's, we have 2 grandchildren together. I don't have to be bad to somebody else because I'm nice to her. It's like, no, these are people who are part of your journey. They're part of your life. We're grown people. We don't have to, look, any of you if you've had children with somebody, there's a part of you that's always going to be connected to them. So you might as well figure out a way to at least coexist with them, because that's going to, every time you look at that child that looks just like him, you're like, yeah, that's just like, yep, that's who I had a baby with. Just thank God I had a baby. And just make peace with it. But this is what I want to leave us all with. We're not trying to change anybody or even have an opinion about everybody. It's so liberating. I came from a church where if a woman came in with too much makeup, the women of the church would come back and get her to come to the altar and start wiping her makeup off. Well, it was like, well, how could you be that intrusive into people's lives? And people thought they were doing the right thing, but that was their agendas foisted upon somebody. You could love God here and worship however you want to, or not worship however you don't want to. And that's kind of why I made that video, because I could tell people were kind of shaming ministers, like you ought to be speaking out, you ought to be speaking out. I'm like, you don't tell me what to do, because I've been speaking out my whole life, and I'm not going to respond to some pressure that you're putting on me, because you have no idea what my inbox is like every day of my life. All the things I have to deal with, and the people that if I alienate them will not hear my voice at all. So, you do what you do, post all your memes, all your whatever you want to do, more power to you. I might even send you some that I think you might enjoy. That's not my lane. Namaste on whatever you want to do, but give me a little namaste back, if you please. I need a little stay, little namaste, meaning, what's a brother got to do around here to get a little namaste? You heard me? Listen. Let's all stand. Did you get anything out of this month? Oh, thank you. Today was very cathartic for me. Thanks for letting me say all my stuff about Sammy. It really is helping me with the process. And keep Eddie and Patrick in your heart as well, because it's still, it's so long ago. So long ago. And I've gone on my text. I'm looking at my text. Eddie says, hey, Patrick and I are coming to Jekyll Island. He said, we're trying to get Sammy to come. And I said, oh, yeah, try to get him to come. He really needs it. And it's like, well, doesn't matter now.
Can I just say, everybody, when I called Jim Monday morning, I was real cool on the phone. I was hysterical inside. I was waiting on him to get there to keep the door. And when Jim called me back, I told Jim, I said, Jim, Sammy's, I forget what I told him, but Jim just said, Eddie, what can I do? And I said, well, I'm really hurting. Just speak peace over me. And Jim's like, text me the address. I'll be there in a few minutes. He said, I'm sweaty. I'm at the gym, but I'm on the way. And he got there before the 2 sisters did. And we're sitting there waiting on them. And all of a sudden, they both show up at the same time. And we just hear this shrill screaming out in the street, because they knew he was going when they seen everything. But anyhow, Jim Swilley's the real deal. That's all.
Thank you. It's funny. I was sweated down, and I came directly from the workout, and so I guess the DeKalb County must use a funeral home to take the body to the. So I told his sisters, I said, let me walk with his body out to the ambulance. So I walked out, and the guys were real sweet. They had suits on. I think they had gloves on. It was funeral home here in town. And I said, they looked at me like, what are you doing here? I said, I'm his pastor. I'm going to walk with the body. I said, I know I don't look like his pastor right now, but I am. And he said, it don't matter what you look like. It matters what's on the inside. I said, well, no, I'm not saying. I'm saying because I'm sweaty and in shorts and a tank top. Not that I don't look like, but thanks for the affirmation. It's all good. I appreciate it. Well, it's a no-brainer. Y'all are my people. I should have been there for Miss Lillian this week if somebody would tell me. That's
He think his uncle has the word or whatever. But you remember when I had that surgery and I told you, well, Bishop, they say I'm going to be here for Christmas if I don't do something. He didn't get to come because he didn't feel good. He said, well, I don't want to make anybody sick. He said, but no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be there for Christmas. And I was there Christmas Eve. Bishop spoke the word. Something happened. I was gone. So you got the word.
Thank you. Thank you, Rhonda. I love you. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, Leona says now, if we have to go to the emergency room, we're like, dear God, let him know, or he is. We'll never hear the end of it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's good. I needed it. You know what? It's really late. I'm not going to run the thing. Y'all know what to do. Thank you for giving. We need, if you want to add to your giving right now, it'd be a good time to do it. You know what they used to call summer slump. I hate that word, but it's like it kind of does that. So, just whatever it is that you do, continue to be faithful. If you have cash, pay it forward. And I love you so much. If you're not going to, just make a decision to go to St. Simon's. It's just do it. And don't say, can we afford it or not. Just none of us can afford to go. We just go. All right. I love you so much. Go in peace.